From the new iPad Air with a mighty M1 chipset to Indian smartwatch brands, all set to take on the Fitbits and Garmins of the world. And of course, unraveling the Elon Musk Twitter connection. It's all here on this action-packed episode of Tech Today. On this week's episode, we have the showstopper, the mighty M1 iPad Air 2022. That's right here on the set, but I'm not entirely sure which one is the iPad Air 2022 and which one is the 2020, because I've owned one of those for a couple of years, and I'm very keen to try out the 2022 edition, but they both look the same, and that's the whole point. So throughout the course of this review, we're going to actually analyze if there's any difference, and I'll also be entirely sure which one I'm reviewing for you. This is the iPad Air 2022 or the iPad Air 5 with M1. But is it really value for money? Well, we're going to find out on this episode of Tech Today. Look, it can be very confusing if you're going into the market for an iPad Air and then you see the M1 iPad Pro. And of course, they're both available in 11-inch options. The shell's almost the same. We saw this in 2020. I'll actually pluck this off the Magic Keyboard, and this is a beautiful color for the Magic Keyboard. Of course, if you don't want it getting dirty, then you can always go for this color. But I honestly have been using the iPad Air just like this for the last, 2 years now, where I put it onto the keyboard and all my daily tasks, from emails to watching content to quick edits for the Tech Today show, and even a little bit of social media stuff, and of course reading Kindles and stuff like that, is all done on this one device. In terms of battery efficiency and stuff like that, I don't know how this would perform. Obviously, it's the M1. It should be a lot more power efficient, but it's also way more powerful than the A14 on last year's iPad Air, or last year's iPad Air. We're talking about the display and design. Of course, this is a 10.9-inch screen, and of course, it comes with a liquid retina display capable of up to 500 nits of brightness. Yes, it doesn't have 120 Hz, and we'll get to that in a bit, but the LED panels support Apple's True Tone, which actually means the color and intensity of the displays for a comfortable viewing experience is sorted no matter what the lighting condition. And of course, it also supports the Apple Pencil 2nd generation. So what I'm trying to say is that everything is interchangeable when you're talking about accessories. Use an Apple Pencil on the 2020 edition, you can use the same one on the 2022 edition, same performance. You want to use a Magic Keyboard, you can use it on either devices. So all the accessories work. In fact, if you're using an iPad Pro from before, and that's an 11-inch model, even those accessories will work on this. So that's what Apple makes it very easy along and across their product line to actually, get a fantastic user experience. Of course, it runs on iPad OS, and a lot of us have complained before about how iPad OS should be a lot more like Mac OS. But we must give Apple credit when it comes to iPad OS, because with iOS 15 or iPad OS 15, there is this very desktop-like experience that you can now enjoy on these tiny iPads, and I think that's cool because they come with touchscreen. But when will that super device come from Apple, which has a touchscreen, works like this, and then works on maybe something a little bit more like macOS? I don't think they're doing that anytime soon, but until then, we will make do with iPad OS as it is, and let's hope it gets better. In terms of design language and utility, one whoosh from 2020 to 2022, not a lot has changed, like I said, on the outside. It still comes, of course, with a USB-C port, although now with an M1, this is twice as fast when you compare it to the last iPad Air. And then, of course, it also comes with Touch ID integrated in the power button. If you were to go for an iPad Pro, then you would have Face ID and you wouldn't have Touch ID. Now, it all comes down to personal preference. Do you prefer, a fingerprint scanner, or do you prefer a Face ID scanner? In a world where a lot of us are living with masks, no matter what Apple does to change, Face ID, Touch ID seems a lot more convenient, and perhaps this should become the gold standard when it comes to Apple devices. That is a feature exclusively reserved for the Air, and it's not still on the Pro. The iPad Air comes in space gray, starlight pink, purple, and a darker blue, and this is perhaps my favorite color ever on an iPad. So hats off to Apple. I think what they must do now is give us a Magic Keyboard in this color, and that will sell like hotcakes. Well, you heard it first on Tech Today. Again, when you're looking at both iPads from 2020 or 2022, you'll see that the camera at the back looks the same, and frankly, it is the same. It's a 12 megapixel shooter, which is the primary camera, and honestly, it shouldn't be a selling point when it comes to iPads, because you can put maybe a LiDAR sensor and another 1,000 cameras at the back on an iPad Pro, but where are you going to use it? You're going to use it maybe for a couple of photos, maybe for a few FaceTime calls if you want to show people what you're looking at, and then of course maybe to scan documents. This will suffice. It's a great camera and all you need on a tablet. It's on the front side, on the selfie side, that things change. Of course, the placement of the camera is still out here on the side, so when you're using it like a laptop, it's going to be a little weird in terms of your look. If you're using it in portrait mode, it's perfectly fine. But things change altogether dramatically, because now what Apple is emphasizing on is the fact that the front camera is a new 12 megapixel camera. It's not just clarity, but it comes finally with center stage. What is center stage? It's Apple's new feature, which we saw on their other iPads, which can actually, well, track you when you are actually walking around, or if your head bobs a little too much like I am right now, then the camera tracks you. It's an ultra wide sensor, which gives you that sort of leeway to move around. So if you're cooking, doing something interesting, I use it all the time when I'm chatting with the Tech Today team and we're planning out the show. I have this weird habit of walking around, and you can see, well, that the camera keeps tracking me, and I'm a little less annoying for my team. But like I said, Apple knows exactly what they're doing when it comes to pricing, and that's exactly what happens with the iPad Air 2022. It happened in 2020 as well, only this time they've given you an extra feature, which is the M1 chip. Inside this, of course, had the A14, which was on the iPhone, a great chip, but this guy is almost twice as powerful, especially when you're talking about multi-core performance. Well, for our final verdict, I'm going to break it down for you. Although you can't really go wrong if you pick up a Pro, this, or even the iPad, because they're all great devices from the Apple ecosystem. But if you really are considering this is the device in your crosshairs, then we'll break it down into a couple of points. The first point being the reason you're going for the new guy over the old guy, which is 2022 versus 2020, and maybe spending a little bit more money or getting a good deal on it, is the fact that you want an M1 chip. You're obsessed with this mighty M1 revolution that's going on at Apple. Two is the fact that you want center stage when you're on FaceTime calls. The third reason is a shaky one. 5G for me is really not a big deal at this point, especially when you can connect to your phones all the time using a hotspot. But if that's also something that you want to consider, well, then the iPad Air now also comes in a cellular version, which gets a lot more expensive. Talking about the price, Apple's been very, very smart about this, because they only give you the Air editions, the old one, new ones, whatever you talk about, in 64 GB and 256 GB. Now, those are weirdly on the opposite ends of the spectrum. I still think 64 GB is a little too less, because if you're going to use the M1 and harness the power of the M1, then you need at least 256 GB or 128 GB as a base model, and that's not available. 64 GB edition will cost you 55,000 rupees, and the 256 GB edition will cost you nearly 69,000 rupees. But this is when things get interesting, and the theory of the way Apple prices things comes in, because now if you consider the iPad Pro, go on the Apple website and you have, well, the 11-inch iPad Pro, which is for 128 gigs, it's around 72,000 rupees. And for the 256 gig version, it becomes 80,000 or 81,000 rupees. Well, that of course is pricing for the 11-inch editions. If you really want a bigger iPad, which is as big as a MacBook almost, the 13-incher, well, then that is a different ball game altogether. And of course, you can get the mini LED and stuff like that. But if you're comparing apples to apples, see what I did there? 11-inch to almost 11-inch, then the iPad Air can be compared to the iPad Pro. Now, if you are actually trying to compare the two, now they both come with M1. What's the difference? The major difference comes in with a Pro Motion display, which means that the Air can only operate on a refresh rate of 60 Hz. That's, well, 60 times per second. The Pro comes with Pro Motion and can go up to 120 Hz. To be very honest, if you put the two together, 99% of the people, it won't make a difference to. But now if you pick up a 128 GB version of the iPad Pro or a 256 GB version of the iPad Air, well, they almost cost the same out here in India, and that might be where you need to really make a decision. I'll make it simple for you in 10 seconds. iPad Air versus iPad Pro, both have M1. If you need Pro Motion, then you need to go for the iPad Pro, spend a little bit more money and get the iPad Pro. But if you don't need Pro Motion, then this will do the job, and it is a mighty good tablet, and of course going to be my daily driver henceforth. Well, of course, on Tech Today, we cover all the biggest product launches from the tech world and the EVs and stuff like that. But we also like to cover what's happening in social media, on the internet, and all of that stuff as well. That's on the second half of the show. Before we actually proceed to that side of the show, there's a lot more we want to cover on the product side. And that happens to be, well, a smartwatch, which is not from an international manufacturer. The Fitbits and the Garmins, maybe some of them, have competition now, and it comes from a legacy Indian brand called Titan. Yes, Titan has now come up with the Titan Smart Pro. It's here on Tech Today, but is it a true bang for your buck? Well, let's find out.
Titan is a very well-known name in the watch space. Many of us have grown up with these watches. We've worn them, our parents have worn them. And now, to keep up with this ever-evolving smart space, Titan has decided to step into the smartwatch category, albeit a little late. Now, Titan has already launched a few smartwatches in the Indian market. The latest one to join the ranks is the Titan Smart Pro. This is the watch we're going to check out today. Priced at Rs 14,995, this watch does come with a pretty impressive set of features. However, this price point pits this watch against smartwatch and smartband veterans like Fitbit, who are already miles ahead. Titan also has cheaper smartwatches like the Sonata Stride, the Titan Smart, and the Fast Track Reflex. But this watch feels a little more complete. It's like Titan is taking these baby steps to create this one perfect watch which will tick all boxes. The Titan Smart Pro is a pretty good looking watch, and despite its aluminium casing, this watch is really light and quite comfortable to wear. The silicone straps are quite basic. You can swap them for other colors if you want. The dial on the Titan Smart Pro is the 42.75mm dial, which is not really very big. Most people are used to very bigger sizes on smartwatches, but it works fine for me because on a daily basis, I use a 40mm dial. The Titan Smart Pro has a touchscreen and it's an AMOLED display, and the bezels on this are quite thick. Titan has kept the aesthetics very neat and clean on the Titan Smart Pro, so there is nothing else on the dial to disrupt you except these two buttons which are meant for functionalities. Titan Smart Pro connects to your smartwatch, iOS or Android, with the Titan Smart Pro app. You can download this app from the App Store or from the Play Store, and you will need this app to keep a track on your readings, feed in more data, and also to change watch faces. Titan has given you more than 100 watch faces to pick from. The Titan Smart Pro is capable of tracking things like your heart rate, your body temperature, SpO2, calories, exercise minutes, stress. Name it, it pretty much can do it. This watch can also track your menstrual cycle and give you reminders for it, but that data needs to be fed into the app and not from the watch itself. The Titan Smart Pro comes with multiple sports modes, and there's also a recognition feature that will help the watch understand by itself what exercises you're up to. The watch is water resistant to 5 ATM, so it ideally means you can take it for a swim, though we have not tried that feature out yet. So if you're wearing it to the gym or are caught out in the rain with this watch, you don't have to worry about it. Now, the features that we see on the Titan Smart Pro are nothing very unique. Most smartwatches nowadays have it. But it is really great to see features like body temperature reading, stress reading, as well as SpO2 reading on a smartwatch, because the last 2 years of COVID have made these factors almost impossible to separate from our regular lives. We need to be tracking them almost constantly. Many high-end smartwatches have actually not included these features in their premium offerings, so here's a plus for Titan. The Titan Smart Pro comes with a 14-day battery promise on a single charge, and it also does other functions like most smartwatches, like giving you your notifications about messages and calls. You cannot reply to messages from this watch, at least I can't with an iPhone, and you can't take calls on this watch because there is no mic and no speaker. Now the bigger question is the Titan Smart Pro worth that 14,995 price tag? Currently, the Titan Smart Pro is available for 11,995, and in that case, it makes sense because it gives you almost all the features that you'd want, covers all the bases as far as tracking and health and fitness are concerned, and it looks pretty good. Can it get better? Sure. Can it track better? Definitely. Can Titan add more things to it? Almost always. Now, Titan is a brand that has been known for its decades of experience of making great watches. So this almost feels like a starting point from where things are just going to get better. Maybe we should give the company a couple of years more and they'll be ready to compete with the big guys out there.
So would you pick up the Titan Smart Pro over maybe a Fitbit or a Garmin? Let us know on our social media handles. DM us and let us know what you're thinking. In fact, you can ask a question which might be featured on our next show. It all happens on our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the like. Now, when we're going in for a commercial break, usually, well, you'd have ordinary people going and picking up normal people, having maybe a glass of water or some popcorn or a snack. Tech geeks like me pluck out, well, their tablets from their magic keyboards and then try out these new covers, which also come with these new tablets. And then you realize they're a lot lighter than the magic keyboard. But I don't want to digress. While I go on my tech geek tangent, I want you guys to maybe get a glass of water, get some popcorn, because the second half of the show, you don't want to miss. Welcome back to Tech Today. I'm your host, Ayush Elavadi. If I were to ask you a question, who's the most influential and controversial Twitter personality? Well, there's a bunch of Twitter influencers. Some of them have been banned from the platform, but the guy I'm talking about is a tech billionaire. You guessed it right, Elon Musk. The blue-eyed boy of Silicon Valley who built a sprawling tech empire from scratch has now been appointed to the board of Twitter. Well, the social networking platform released a statement proposing the terms and conditions of Musk's appointment. Musk will now serve as a Class 2 director until 2024. His appointment, however, comes with a caveat. The Neuralink co-founder cannot become the beneficial owner of more than 14.9% of the company's common stock. The move comes days after the billionaire acquired a 9.2% stake in Twitter. This stake, valued at nearly $3 billion, makes Musk the biggest shareholder in Twitter. Twitter shares jumped 26% in pre-market trading on the back of the news of Musk's purchase. However, with that massive stake in the Twitter pie, will Musk actually try to propose tweaks and changes to actually make Twitter, well, a different creature or monster altogether? Will they actually be a lot more profitable? That's what we're waiting for. In fact, Musk has also been vocal in his critique of the Jack Dorsey-founded platform. The SpaceX founder had previously tweeted questioning the tech giant's commitment to free speech. Earlier, Musk had even proposed an alternative to Twitter, flagging the site's ineptitude at upholding the basic fundamental principles of free speech. What's interesting is that Musk had recently created a poll on Twitter where he actually asked users if they wanted an edit button on the social media platform. Now, this tweet actually created a significant ripple on the Twitterverse, forcing Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal to actually chime in. But Musk's bonhomie with Twitter, however, is a protracted affair. Look, Elon Musk is famous or infamous for all his tweets on cryptocurrencies. He's been speaking about Dogecoin and Shiba Inu, and every time he tweets on those topics, it sends the markets into a complete tizzy. On one hand, Elon's tweet on car maker Tesla accepting Dogecoin as payment for merchandise had galvanized the currency. On the other hand, him not owning even a single Shiba Inu had seen the cryptocurrency tumble. Musk has repeatedly hyped Dogecoin through his social media handle, even tweeting that it was the people's crypto. I, for one, can speak for the tech geek community, and all of us get really excited every time he tweets on the platform because he can randomly reply to your tweet and even retweet things that you're actually asking him and, well, challenge you to things and crack jokes about anything. But that's what makes him so interesting. The man, the phenomenon that is Elon Musk. But how does all of this really play out with him being appointed to the board of directors and his ideas of free speech? And of course, things he wants to do in the crypto world as well. And with Tesla, well, we are going to be tracking this space and waiting with bated breath. And of course, you'll get all the updates here on Tech Today. From kadha recipes to coronavirus and chicken, these were the terms that we were searching for on Google for the last 2 years whilst we were locked down during the pandemic. And some of this, well, is dangerous and it's all at your own risk because there was all sorts of false information, false news and propaganda floating around, which led to an infodemic of sorts. Here's what Nabila has to share in this special report.
Coronavirus in chicken, Limsi, Zincovit, Ayush Kadha, Coronavirus in ice cream. Yes, this is what India searched for in the last 2 years. Over 22.3 million were looking for information related to COVID-19 on social media. And the source here is the Indian Council of Medical Research and the National Institute of Nutrition in Hyderabad. The controlled spread of misinformation, spread of news and propaganda related to COVID-19 created an infodemic that led to panic buying and unscientific practices among people. The coronavirus pandemic did not only make us conscious of our immunity and our hygiene, but also on what we eat. A study released by the Indian Council of Medical Research and the National Institute of Nutrition in Hyderabad has revealed that Indians searched for some of the keywords during the pandemic. And those keywords include immunity, eating behavior, food safety, food scares and concerns, and COVID scare. These words showed a steep rise as people looked for answers on immunity boosters, on vitamin supplements and their brands, and Ayush Kadha during the first wave. The online survey conducted on adult Indian internet users reported a high consumption of vitamin C-rich fruits of up to 71.9%, as well as vitamin C and zinc of up to 68.2 and 61.4% respectively, and supplements also to boost immunity were widely used. Traditional Indian spices like ginger and garlic were used by 62.9% and 50.9% more respectively. And after Prime Minister's address on April 14, 2020, Prime Minister Modi shared tips to build immunity against COVID-19 as recommended by the Ministry of Ayush. The search trend of the keyword Ayush Kadha appeared for the first time in April 2020. Healthy food became trendy while people searched for vitamin D, grocery delivery and Limsi. And compared to that, junk food, food delivery, street food, all these keywords saw a decline in searches by people in India. Along with healthy food, search for immunity-boosting food also surged. Most respondents, about 71.9%, reported having increased their consumption of vitamin C-rich foods like citrus fruits, guava, amla, etc. during the COVID-19 period. And dependence on homeopathy medicines for boosting immunity against COVID-19 was found to be at least an increase of 28.1%. And then it appears Indians were obsessed with hygiene during the COVID pandemic period. They use a special cleaners to wash vegetables and fruits, like to remove dust and germs, were reported to be relatively higher during the COVID times than the pre-COVID times. While approximately 60% of respondents reported having reduced the frequency of ordering cooked foods via online platforms, the preference to buy vegetables, fruits and groceries from online delivery services increased significantly during this COVID period. A majority of 83% showed no concerns about the safety of foods in restaurants or eateries during the post-lockdown period. The study further concluded that more people relied on the internet compared to medical professionals to determine healthy and COVID-appropriate practices during the COVID pandemic in India.
Well, there you have it, from the biggest product launches to the biggest conversations in tech and, of course, what's happening on social media and on the internet. It's all been here in this one action-packed episode of Tech Today. Please write into us and tell us if you've liked the show, you've not liked the show. Your feedback matters. And, of course, until next week, adios.